I've got too many iPads. In front of me, I have all the old iPads. Well, some of the old iPad Pros. I've got the 12.9-inch iPad 3rd generation with, you can see by this camera, the 4th generation and the 5th generation. And this 5th one is the newest one that they've brought out with the M1 chip inside. So this one is meant to be ridiculously fast in comparison to even the last one. I think it was like a 40% increase in some areas. This video is brought to you by Paperlike. If you don't know who I am, I'm a graphic designer. I do logo design and I do hand lettering. So I do a lot of drawing, sketching, and consumption on the iPad because it's easier than doing it on paper now. I use apps like Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, Procreate, Adobe Fresco, Photoshop, any creative app you can see that I use on there. And I've spent a long time with each of these iPads. I got this iPad a couple months ago. And what I thought would be cool to do is to show the real life practical differences between these iPads. Now, if you're a designer, someone at uni or a student, whatever, and you want a new iPad or an iPad, but you don't know which to choose from because you see the M1 iPad, the specs are amazing, and then obviously the specs aren't so amazing in these ones. I want to show you the real life application uses of these iPads and the differences of speed. So first of all, what I'm going to do is we're going to open up Geekbench. Jordan, my video editor, said it's probably a good idea to show some hard stats. And I think that is a good idea as well, to give us the numerical idea of what score it could be or how fast it could be. I've got too many iPads. What a problem, woe is me. So many iPads. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Geekbench in all of them. Remember, this is the fastest, the M1, so the 5th, the 4th, and the 3rd generation. And we're going to do a CPU score on each of these. Obviously, if you haven't seen my iPad Pro M1 review, you may not know the differences. So I'd go and tell you to watch that before you watch this video, but make sure you do come back and watch it. Just pause this video, go and check that out. It's linked in the description. But the main differences of the new M1 iPad Pro is obviously the M1 chip being even faster. It's slightly thicker because of a bigger battery in there. It's got a Thunderbolt USB-C, so that means it's full Thunderbolt, very fast now. It's not just USB-C, and the display is ridiculously bright, and it has a micro or mini LED panel, which makes it more contrasting, so the screen is a lot better. Or so they say it's a lot better. Okay, so the M1 iPad Pro is now finished, and it has a single core score in the CPU of 1716 and a multi-core of 7298. Which, if I'm not mistaken, is ridiculously fast. Now let's see the differences. So we have a single core score over here of 1123, and then on the multi-core score on the 4th generation, it is a 4698. So there's quite a bit of a numerical difference there. Then on the 3rd generation, the first design of this iPad, we have a single core score of 1115 and a multi-core score of 1674. So you can see there's not much of a difference between the 3rd generation and the 4th generation, but you can see there's a massive jump in the 5th M1 generation. Let's go to compute.
A few moments later.
So the M1 is finished and it's got a metal score of 21197. Now obviously this iPad over here has 8 GB of RAM on the new M1, but if you go further up, so into the 1 TB storage, you'll have like 16 gigs, which is insane. So then we go on to the generation number 4, and it has a 11757 metal score. And then on the 3rd generation, the first of the design, it's a 10814. You can see a huge jump. So the jump that's happening in reality is quite big between the 4th and the M1. So those are the numerical numbers. So those are the stats that we've got. We can see that there are large numbers, that this one's basically more than double this one, which is insane in everything. And this one's like, compared to the 4th one, isn't that crazy. But this means nothing to me. Actual nothing. It's great having stats and everything else, but when you're a designer and you're using it, like with the Apple Pencil or the Magic Keyboard or whatever, you want to know how it will run when you're using it. I'm going to call forth on my editor, Jordan, to come over here, and he's going to help me press some buttons because we're going to do an app opening test. See which one opens that app the fastest. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up Procreate at the same time. So 3rd generation, 4th, and 5th. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1, boom. So obviously the M1 has opened up slightly faster. not too much of a difference. And I've got different files in each, but we've actually downloaded the same files in here. So we're going to open up the classic hand lettering one. This is a larger document, which means that the faster it opens, the faster the iPad. Ready? 3, 2, 1. I mean, this one and this one, there's no real speed differences in Procreate I can see. Obviously, what I know is that you can add more layers in Procreate on this one and this one, I believe. I think this one has a restricted layers and it's not that many. So that's Procreate. Let's try a different app. Now, before I go into my next point, I just want to thank the sponsors of this video, Paperlike. Now, every single one of these iPads here, including all the ones I've ever had, have had a Paperlike on them. Now, Paperlike is exactly what it says. It's a matte screen protector that feels like paper. When you see me drawing, you'll notice that you don't see any sort of like chunking like this, where my hand is just gliding and you can actually hear it. The matte screen protector feels like paper and it works with the Apple Pencil and the screen still looks amazing. I use it because I can't stand drawing on glass. It just doesn't feel natural and I always have to wear one of those like faux gloves on them, which is like a glove with just 2 fingers for my pinky and ring finger. It's just not nice. But the Paperlike screen protector makes it so much better to use when drawing and when just navigating the iPad, and knowing that I'm protecting my screen as well from scratches from my Apple Pencil is really nice. If you'd like to learn more about Paperlike and why I like it, then go ahead and visit the link down below in the description. So we're going to do Adobe Illustrator next. Now, the 3rd generation Adobe Illustrator wasn't even on the iPad. It came out at the end of the 4th generation's life cycle. So obviously the M1 is most likely going to work better. In fact, I know it does. But we're going to see the differences. Are you ready, Jordan? 3, 2, 1. So open fast. All the documents are there. Are the documents going to appear?
Much later.
There you go. The recents did come because I haven't opened this iPad up in a long time. So there you go. M1 faster, quite a bit faster actually, than these two. Not much of a difference when you're using it in real life, but let's go on to the next one. Open up a large document or a large-ish document in Illustrator. Are you ready, Jordan?
Ready.
3, 2, 1. Someone else is editing in this file. That test didn't work out so well over here, but what is interesting about this, what I found in Adobe Illustrator on this iPad, the first one, the 3rd generation, is that when you use it, you may not see it, but when you use it, it's not as nippy. It's not as responsive as, let's say, even this one. And then when I move on to the M1, this just genuinely feels a bit better. Like, genuinely feels a lot better to use. When I'm like doing stuff on the M1, it feels a bit more responsive. And that's most likely down to the M1, if not completely down to the M1. This one over here in the middle, it works fine. You can use it. This one you can also use. The differences are very slight. In real terms, really slight. If you're sat with me like this and you have 3, obviously you're going to choose the M1 if you've got the option, because it is the greatest and the best one that they've brought out. But don't be fooled by the benchmarks. They don't mean that every app will open faster, and I'll explain why. So the reason why Apple put the M1 chip into the iPad is obvious. It's Apple architecture, it's a silicon, they can make it, why wouldn't they? It fits in the iPad, makes the iPad super fast like my MacBook or the iMac with M1. Now obviously the stats are a huge jump, but the apps haven't been that much of a huge jump. And the reason behind this is because app developers have not had the chance yet to sort of, I'm going to say, optimize their apps for M1 on the iPad. Of course, every developer is limited by the products that Apple put out with the power that they have. So they have to make sure it runs well on all the iPads. Now, with the M1 iPad being so new, this gives developers a chance to create apps that blow anything else out the water. The more power Apple put in for developers to use, the more they will utilize over time. So right now, when you have the first M1 iPad Pro or even a brand new iPad, you may not see a huge productivity difference or an efficiency difference aside from opening times ever so slightly, or aside from just little things like, the smoothness inside of Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. You may not see much of a difference at all, but in the future you will. So halfway into the iPad M1 life cycle, I am putting my money on the fact that apps will be even better, because we know that Procreate are coming out with a huge update with the M1, allowing them to add more to the program, having more layers and more functionality. If you're a video editor, obviously the M1 is going to be slightly different for you because processing power is huge for rendering. But as a designer, someone who uses Adobe Illustrator, someone who says, oh, well, now you can just use Adobe Illustrator on the iPad and this could just be your work powerhouse for any design work. And it technically could. You could go with any of these, really. And this is years old, the first one. So the final thoughts on the iPad Pro's lineup, all the way from the 3rd generation to the M1. They're all good. They're all very good. I'm excited about the M1. I got the M1 because obviously I make YouTube videos. I like to show you guys the new stuff, and I'm a massive consumer. So buying new tech is something that I enjoy doing. For a lot of you guys that are doing design work and you started using Adobe Illustrator, whether it's on the 3rd generation or the 4th, you will not see a huge difference getting the M1. When you will see the biggest difference is about halfway and slightly towards the end of the M1 1st generation life cycle, the 5th generation iPad. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get this iPad. If you're someone who does something creative like 3D modeling or video rendering or Lightroom or takes photos and edits them, whatever, you should get it. It's a great iPad. If you're on a budget, then go for one of these. There's no real difference at all when compared to the M1, apart from the M1 being that bit more snappy. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe. It is completely free and it helps out the channel a lot. It lets me know when you like a video as well, when you like it, and comment down below your thoughts. It's very good for the channel and maybe you'll learn something new checking out those comments. Let me know which iPad Pro you would go for, or whether you think it's worth updating from the 4th or the 3rd to the M1. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.